Hello, welcome back. It's Friday night for me, and I have 3 chapters inside the House of Windsor, chapter 3, 4, and 5. I'll be covering in this review. There's my disclaimer. Now, a few of my pictures are a little bit out of order. This is the book written by Tina Brown, and we're going to jump into it. Chapter 3 and 4 were quite short. So, to get started, I just want to make sure I'm recording here. I think so. All right. For the Queen, the shock of Diana's death at the age of 36 on August the 31st, 1997, was a traumatic commingling of the public and the private. Diana was not simply her son's ex-wife, whose life had been cut short in a calamitous car crash. She was also the mother of the future king and adored icon of the nation. At the rate of 6,000 an hour, people who had never met the Princess of Wales streamed into London to mourn her death. The diversity of the crowd, as much as the size, was of relevance. Old, young, black, white, South Asian, East Asian, wearing shorts, saris, pinstripes, hijabs, in wheelchairs and on crutches, carrying young children aloft on their shoulders, or pushing them in proms. As the bouquets of flowers piled up outside Kensington Palace and the death of Mother Teresa on September the 5th went largely ignored, the troubled and turbulent Princess of Wales was on her way to becoming a celebrity saint, not just in Britain, but in every nook of the globe. Not British royal in history has ever had such a magnetic hold on the world's imagination. A fact not lost on Prime Minister Blair when he winningly declared her on her death as the people's princess. Charles delivers the news to his son. And that was it for 3, so now we're on to chapter 4. The most awful task of Charles' life was waking up his 12 and 15-year-old sons at 7:15 a.m. at Balmoral to deliver the news of their mother's death. Harry expressed a sentiment that seems forgotten in his more recent interviews. One of the hardest things for a parent to do is to tell your children that the other parent has died. But, he was there for us. He was the one of the 2 left, and he tried to do his best and to make sure we were protected and looked after, Prince William recalled. The shock of the biggest thing, and I still feel it. People go, shock can't last that long, but it does. And the trauma of that day has lived with me for 20 years like a weight. The Spencer family. A person on the funeral planning committee told me the Spencer side had been saying what the role of the children had to be. Philip suddenly blasted, "Stop telling us what to do with those boys. They had lost their mother." His voice was full of emotion, a real voice of a grandfather speaking. It was also the voice of a man who had effectively lost his own mother at the tender age of 10. So it seems like Earl Spencer and some of the other members were trying to plan out the funeral, and it appears to me from reading this, and I could be wrong, that it was their idea to have the boys walk behind the casket of their mother. But then, of course, Prince Philip had said, if you'll walk, I'll walk, or if you'll walk, I'll walk with you. All right, skipping down the behavior of the Spencer family. Nothing could have shocked and outraged Her Majesty and Prince Philip more in their life of public service than the accusatory oration by Diana's brother, Earl Spencer. His address from the pulpit was a hand grenade aimed at every sitting member of the House of Windsor. You remember when he was speaking at her funeral, and it was almost like he was putting blame square and directly on them. But he did have a hand in being fooled by Martin Bashir in the BBC and talked his sister, Princess Diana, into doing the sit-down with him and making those revelations. Earl Spencer at the funeral. Blood family. Spencer had publicly kicked the frozen-faced royal family in the teeth. And another time, the hot-headed Earl would have been summarily executed in the Tower of London. Earl Spencer's appalling behavior toward the royal family. Archbishop Carey was appalled by Earl Spencer's eulogy, which he deemed vengeful and spiteful. Prince Philip was so angry that he had to be talked down afterward by Earl Mountbatten's son-in-law, Lord Broadbourne. Very bold, was the Queen Mother reportedly said between clamped teeth. Even the Queen found it hard to rise above. Nearly 7 years later, at the opening of the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fountain in Hyde Park, she tossed a gib at Earl Spencer. I hope you feel satisfied. Never again. Meaning after what they went through with her. That's the end of chapter 4, because, of course, I'm having to skip around. I have to do commentary in between, and I can only do a certain amount, and it can be considered under fair use and guidelines for educational and entertainment purposes. Chapter 5, Keeping the Princes Busy After the Funeral. On the Monday after the funeral, hoping to distract the boys, Tiggy Leg Burke, their kindly big sister caregiver, appointed by Charles after his separation from Diana, took them to follow the Beaumont or Beaufort hunt on foot. They were greeted with all the right sensitivity by an old family friend, Captain Ian Farquhar, joint master of the Duke of Beaufort hunt. "It's good to see you, sirs," he said to the shattered young princes. "I just want you to know that we are all very, very sorry about your mother. You have our deepest sympathy, and we were all incredibly proud of you on Saturday. That's all I'm going to say, and now we're going to get on with the day." "Thank you. Yes, you're right, sir," William gravely replied, as if the Queen's stoic genes had fully asserted themselves in her grandson. "We all need to get on with the day." Harry, always more fragile, struggled mightily to manage without a mother. In the weeks after his death, they tried to cheer him. Charles took his younger son at half-term on a 5-day tour of South Africa, Swaziland, and Lesotho, then sent them off on a safari to Botswana with a party led by his bluff one-time equerry and former Welsh Guard officer, Mark Dwyer. Isn't that the one that gave the boys lessons that Diana might have been seeing too, whom he later recruited as the boys' mentor? Dwyer made the boys' day in Johannesburg by scoring them a backstage visit with the Spice Girls. We remember that. They seemed very happy that day. Normal family holidays without the trials of paparazzi following the boys. Despite Earl Spencer's vow that Diana's boys would be steered by his blood family, William and Harry were not raised at all by the Spencers, but as Windsors. No more paparazzi trailed school breaks at European resorts and private islands in the Caribbean. They holidayed almost exclusively at Balmoral and Sandringham, where Prince Philip regaled them with stories of military history and taught them how to shoot. Their friends were mostly the children of their father's circle. It was Diana, more sober-sided sister, don't rock the boat Jane, who became a steady presence in the boys' life, hosting them on country weekends in Norfolk with their cousins. And that was Lady Jane. And then enters Tiggy Leg Burke. Mostly it was Tiggy Leg Burke who had joined Harry on the Africa trip, who provided material warmth and structure. A jolly hockey sticks blonde from minor nobility, Tiggy was a Charles loyalist to the core who believed that the boys should be distracted by fresh air, a rifle, and a horse. Now I want you to pay close attention to this part because this may be something that you're not aware of, and it's going to make reference to the BBC Martin Bashir interview. So, 3 people in the marriage, and it's not who you may think. In 2006, Harry invited her to watch his passing out graduation parade as an officer at Sandhurst. Who are we talking about? Tiggy Leg Burke. And in 2019, Harry privately made Tiggy Leg Burke Archie's godmother, or at least one of them. One of Bashir's worst calamities was to tell Diana that Tiggy was having an affair with Prince Charles and had had an abortion. So see, it wasn't true, but it was something he told her. So when Diana said, well, it was kind of crowded, there were 3 of us in this marriage, Tiggy Leg Burke was the nanny who took care of the boys after they had separated. And but he wasn't having an affair with her. She was engaged to another man and married a different man. Then it goes on to say that Tiggy was having an affair with Charles and had an abortion, according to Martin Bashir. In 2021, Tiggy, now Mrs. Charles Pettifer, was reportedly offered substantial damages by the BBC for the lies that were told to Princess Diana so that she would react to those, what she had heard in the BBC interview when she sat down with Martin Bashir. So I think we all assumed, and I'd heard this before, that it was Camilla that was the third in the marriage, but Diana was referring to Tiggy Leg Burke at this time. And I'd read that in another book as well, I think Lady C's. Scarred by the public fury after Diana pursued by paparazzi, some editors were almost grateful for the clarity of the PCC's Editor's Code of Practice, which spared them from having to make editorial decisions that could have reaped a public backlash. According to Lord Black, who was then director of the PCC, newspapers were constantly offered stories about the princes from the other boys at school and liked having the protection of the code to reject them. So there were a lot of people that the boys went to school with that were willing to come out and speak to papers and that wanted to be paid for their stories. But because of what had happened to Diana, the editors of the major newspapers had come up with this editor's code of practice so that they wouldn't follow Harry and William around because they felt like they were already so traumatized. So they gave them their space, and then Charles would agree at certain times to allow them to come in and take pictures of them all together. The prince's holidays were summarily off limits unless access was choreographed by the palace or by their father. Charles could offer the princes a life away from the media. Princess Diana acknowledged to me, and she's referring to Tina Brown, the author, in June 1997 when she visited Manhattan for the charity auction of her dresses at Christie's auction house, that she found it hard to compete with what Charles offered the boys at the multiple royal homes. In the July before her death, she took them all to what she hoped would be a fun holiday at Harrod's owner, Muhammad Al-Fayed's Saint-Tropez spread, with interludes selling on his 15 million pound yacht, the Jonquil. But the princes didn't like it much. The flash and excess of Al-Fayed's hospitality, the groaning buffets, and the palatial bathrooms, they embarrassed William in particular at the opulence. At sea, he strayed below deck most of the time to avoid the long lenses of the paparazzi. The press presence also ruined the trip with Diana to a local fun fair. But wasn't she famous for calling them? How would they have ever known that she was there? And especially, it would have been kept quiet, knowing that you've got the future king, and that's William jumping off the stairs there. And this is Harry on the ski boat with Princess Diana. So it said, Harry, now this is Harry, meanwhile, had gotten into a altercation with Al-Fayed's youngest son, Omar. who Harry wanted his room, and Omar refused to give up the room that Harry wanted to sleep in. So here was Harry not getting his way. This was Omar. It was his father's yacht, and he could sleep anywhere he wanted, but Harry wanted him to give up his room and to give it to him. So there was an altercation. In the post-Diana years, the boys could disappear from the media noise in the woods and fields of the royal estates. On one occasion, William elected to stay at Sandringham, popping pheasants with his grandfather rather than going skiing with Charles in Closters, where the press might pursue them on the slopes. Earl Spencer was not there for William and Harry. Windsor world gradually swallowed up the boys. Earl Spencer soon piped down about his thundering promise from the pulpit about the preeminence of Diana's blood family. His own private life had been consumed by 2 acrimonious divorces, and he was not a central figure in his nephew's circle of influence. So he was so wrapped up in his own life, he really didn't go around William and Harry. But when Harry started dating Meghan, this happened. When William turned to him to urge Harry to slow down his rush to the altar with Meghan, the younger brother viewed this as a gross intrusion by William. He was mad at William because he talked to Earl Spencer to say, hey, he won't listen to me, maybe he'll listen to you. But Harry felt like, you haven't been in my life, you haven't been there for me. You know, you're not someone that I'm close to. He was close to his mother's sister, Aunt Jane, and T-Leg Burke, but he wasn't particularly close to Earl Spencer, at least not at that time. So moving on, the next thing, the Queen's feelings about the public viewing after Diana's death. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the Queen right here. The Queen privately remained shaken by what her aides called the revolution. Come on, Pearl. Her Majesty would not forget the time when her perceived aloofness from the British people, griefs over Diana's death, caused them to turn on her, or what she had felt obliged to do when Diana's coffin passed the palace, because, you know, she had her HRH stripped from her, and she was no longer, she no longer had that. I guess she still resumed being princess, but when the coffin passed by, the Queen and Margaret and the Queen Mother, they bowed their head as if she was still a royal. But she was no longer a royal. The Spencers were, pitching a fit. And then there was a public outcry. So they were asking them to put the Queen's Standard flag at half-mast. There were all these things that you would only do for a state funeral of a member of the royal family and not a divorcee prior member. So it said that the first and only time, except for a head of state, the Queen waited for her coffin to go by, then bowed her head, and she said, never again. And that's what they meant when they wanted them to be careful about who had married into the family. Were they going to be someone that wanted to go out and seek the limelight and not stay true to the monarchy and be a representative or ambassador for the Queen of England? They didn't want someone that was going to come in and be pushy and try to take over and stray public loyalty or fanfare and be a celebrity. Now, Diana worked very hard at her charities, and she did do a lot, but I think Meghan felt like that, it just looked like she would show up places and everybody would donate money and she would be this worldwide superstar, when in fact Diana worked very hard, but Diana did do a lot of things wrong, and I did love her and still do. I admire her. I think that there's so many wonderful attributes about her. But I feel that Charles has made mistakes. I feel like the royal family made mistakes in trying to arrange a marriage and not let him choose the person he was in love with, because the Queen being head of the church, it was felt at that time that Charles needed to marry a virginal woman that had never had any serious boyfriend, so there could never be any question of any past relationships coming out into the press later, like there was with Harry. So things changed quite a bit, and they made a lot of changes for Meghan, and we'll get into that more later on in the book. But that's the end of chapter 5, so I'm going to stop there, and I'll try to read several more chapters depending on how long they are. And if they're long, I'll put them up one chapter at a time. But I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know that there's any big surprises that we've come to so far, but it's good to have reminders of different things. And there are some tidbits that maybe I hadn't heard, or it's been expounded on a little bit more. But I want to thank you all for watching, and let me just get to the end here. And I will see you in the next video. I hope if you enjoyed this, you'll like and put a comment or an emoji in the comment section. So hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Love you all.